When I was younger, I used to love my nose. So up until ninth grade, I thought I had such a cute little nose, and I remember looking at my reflection sometimes and just loving it. Then I learned about side profiles and I started absolutely hating my nose. I hated the way it protruded from my face, and this hatred of my face still resurfaces a lot today. I never thought much about the size of my arms or my hip dips or stretch marks until social media kept showing me ways to hide these unwanted features. Here's this cream for stretch mark, and here are these exercises to lose fat in your arms. I didn't even know what cellulite was until social media taught me about it. I remember the moment I looked in the mirror and thought, oh, I do have that ugly texture in my thighs that no one likes. And I remember hating it. So why do I bring up my nose and cellulite? If any one of us was born on an island with no access to social media and no one to tell them that certain bodily features are bad, I can tell you with 100% certainty that most of these insecurities wouldn't exist within us. We wouldn't want to keep up with the latest beauty trends like thigh gaps or lip filler. We would just exist in our own bodies and as we are. Without all the influence from social media, we wouldn't care about any of that. According to Discovery ABA, the amount of plastic surgeries performed in the US increased by 19% from 2019 to 2022. Why? During COVID, most people had to see their faces a lot more than previously, and the theory is that they noticed a lot more about their appearance, and all these new insecurities developed that they probably wouldn't have noticed before. Another reason, social media. Plastic surgery is so widely shown compared to before. People showing the process of getting lip filler and Botox, to doctors live streaming the procedure. Whereas before, plastic surgery was this kind of taboo thing that no one really wanted to admit that they had. Now it's shown off and advertised as a cool thing that you should totally check out. I also want to mention plastic surgeons on TikTok, which Jordan Teresa did a whole video surrounding this topic. She went more into depth about plastic surgery and how society treats women who are seen as trying too hard. I definitely recommend checking out her video because she said a lot more about this topic than I will, and she hit a lot of important points. But here, I just want to briefly talk about one specific plastic surgeon on TikTok. Recently, a TikTok of Daniel Barrett went viral where he guessed the ages of the Love Island cast.
She's 35, lips, veneers, Botox, maybe a little cheek filler.
Is Samantha.
32, lips, veneers, nose, cheeks.
Do you want to hear their
Botox.
ages just for fun?
Yeah.
Okay, so Samantha is 26.
Oh God.
Nicole is 24.
Oh my God.
Harriet is 24.
Oh my God.
And then Jess is 25.
Wow.
He guessed that they were older than they actually were, and it was all, OMG, no way, they look so old. If not done properly, this can happen, guys.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, you know, plastic surgery and injectables done incorrectly can make you look older. So, boy, I was really off.
And this man makes my blood boil so much. I literally needed to take several breaks while doing my research for this. His TikToks are full of giving recommendations to young women about procedures they can have done for certain, quote, problems with their face. I found this one TikTok where it was like, 3 signs you're ready for a facelift, and looking through his TikToks, it's all similar content. It rubs me so wrong because, first of all, he had the nerve to poke fun at these women that had procedures done that he actively promotes and literally does himself. Like, that alone is so infuriating, it makes me want to rip my hair out. But then, on top of that, his whole internet presence revolves around feeding off of mostly young women's insecurities and telling them how they should fill his pockets or the pockets of his industry. He's literally feeding off of people's insecurities and even directly contributing to them. Meanwhile, he's a man with graying hair and wrinkles. Like, who are you to tell women that they need these procedures done when you have no problem naturally aging yourself? Like, get out of my face. And it's not just this guy, there's plenty of other plastic surgeries who have gotten popular on TikTok, further popularizing and promoting plastic surgery and cosmetic procedures as a cool and everyday normal thing. Social media has not only normalized plastic surgery, but it also turns out new insecurities every day like clockwork. It feels like every other day there's some new trend or filter to see if you have like the desired feature. Like, I remember a while back, there's this trend where everyone was flipping the camera to see if their face was symmetrical. Questions like, are you fox pretty or deer pretty? Trends that seem innocent enough, but when you think about it, there are more things that just make you pick apart your features even more, trying to fit into a category. Along with these trends where people are checking whether they have the quote desired look, there's all these micro trends that burn out before they can even catch on. I didn't know what a micro trend was until I started researching for this, by the way. According to Tech Target, a microtrend is, quote, a tendency in the direction of some phenomenon that is fairly pervasive within a given sphere of influence and may only last for a few years or even months. And with apps like TikTok that have 34 million videos posted a day, these trends are going to have an even shorter shelf life and go out of fashion fast. So the second you've caught up with one trend, the next one's already taking over. A microtrend on TikTok specifically is described as accelerated trends that last a month instead of a season. Think ugly dad sandals, checkerboard prints, and chunky plastic rings. These microtrends gain rapid popularity on platforms like TikTok, only to fade away within weeks. Huge contributors to these microtrends are fast fashion companies like Shein, which release between 700 and 1,000 new items a day in 2022. This obviously leads to a ton of waste since people are only wearing these things once or twice, which I'll get more into later on in the video, but in this context I want to emphasize how it always feels like you're chasing after the new cool thing, but in seemingly no time, everyone has already moved on to the next thing. So you're always striving for something that you'll never quite be able to accomplish. It's no surprise that social media has very harmful long-term effects on the people who use it. It's literally designed so that you never stop scrolling, and if you do, you get bored with real life and want to go right back to scrolling. Our brains are made for this. So when you're met with all these overwhelming trends and ways to improve your physical appearance every time you open the app, it's bound to take a toll. And a very detrimental one at that. When it seems like everyone online is saying the same thing, like a skinny waist is what you want, or a smaller nose, or a thigh gap, whatever, then you're going to start believing it. You're going to look down at yourself and see that you don't look like all those pretty girls online and wonder where you went wrong. Maybe you'll start considering plastic surgery because your favorite influencer got lip filler last week, and I think you see my point, right? Social media is a huge contributor to insecurities, and I'm terrified for little kids growing up on these apps learning that their physical appearance determines their worth as a human in this world. Like, remember when everyone was confused why Sephora was being taken over by 10-year-olds buying makeup and skincare products? It's because they're chronically online and want to fit in. It's because we're actively teaching them that skincare and makeup is important and they just want to do what everyone else is doing. If we're already seeing such horrible effects in ourselves and we're adults, how do you think this will affect a developing child? A TikTok influencer is defined as a user on social media who has established credibility through the videos they create and post on TikTok. This person has access to a large audience and can persuade others by virtue of their authenticity and reach. When I think influencer, I think of a pretty girl who sits in front of her camera promoting some makeup products or new clothing or telling us what she eats in a day while showing off her flat stomach. Then turning to the side so we can say it one more time. Blatantly making their viewers feel bad about their probably not so flat stomachs and promoting potentially unhealthy relationships with food. On top of insecurities, influencers promote overconsumption and superficial thinking. This culture is rotting our brains because now every time we open our phones, we're told how to be an it girl and pretty, and it always revolves around certain diets, exercising, buying certain clothes, doing your makeup a certain way, and taping your face before you go to bed so you don't get wrinkles. Here's this pair of shoes that's perfect for fall. Like, do you really need another pair of shoes? I saw a really good video by Ashley Viola where she did a whole deep dive into how influencer culture has become really harmful, making people more superficial and promoting wastefulness. Lots of people have stopped using critical thinking skills really. Like before, you'd maybe have to read the back of a bottle and ask your friends around for recommendations for hair conditioners, and then you'd ultimately make a decision on whether or not it's the best fit for you. Now, you just go on TikTok and boom, here are 1,000 videos right there for you. Someone tells you that this conditioner is one you absolutely need, and you take their word for it. And lucky you, there's not only the hair conditioner you originally wanted, but here's also this skincare product and that lip liner, and you need all these things too. And next week, there will be another one of all of the above for you to try out as well. The same applies to clothing trends. A million videos of what I wore this week to school, or showing off this top or that pair of shoes. All the comments asking for links for more clothes than anyone could physically wear in a lifetime. So you know what happens? Most of it ends up in landfills. In the US alone, an estimated 11.3 million tons of textile waste end up in US landfills yearly, accounting for approximately 85% of all textiles. This equates to an alarming 81.5 pounds of textile waste per person per year. Or to put it into more perspective, 2,150 textile pieces are discarded per second across the country, and this is in the US alone. According to Time, Shein leaves about 6.3 million tons of carbon dioxide a year in its trail. And while on the topic of Shein, the people making these clothes are, quote, working in unsafe workshops, lacking safety protocols like windows and emergency exits. Many also worked without contracts or minimum wage requirements, thereby allowing the company to reportedly fail to pay its employees properly. In one factory, they made a daily base salary of $20, which would then be docked by $14 if any garments had mistakes. So that's $6 a day. And who's this affecting? Shein is facing allegations of child labor, and the majority of sweatshop workers are women of color. So, at the end of the day, is it really worth it? Buying all these clothes that you'll probably wear a couple times just to throw it out? The landfills that they end up at are 2.8 times more likely to be located in areas with a higher percentage of BIPOC residents. Only around 15% of used textiles are theoretically recycled, and of those, up to half are simply shipped abroad to other countries, largely in the global south, where they end up in landfills there. These countries often have less advanced municipal waste systems, meaning that the environmental damage and health impacts of decomposing textiles will be much greater there than they would be in the United States. And remember, this is just me talking about the US, and just talking about clothing. We've become so far detached from reality that we're promoting this horrifying overconsumption and waste that's not only killing our planet, but exploiting children and women and putting people who live near these landfills at risk. And for what? To feel cool? To fit in? Come on, man. It's no secret that historically people have been striving to remain young forever. What comes to mind is the legend of the Fountain of Youth, which appeared in the writings of Herodotus in as early as 5th century BC. In 1953, Tom Lehrer sang, "Since I appreciate you, let's find love while we may, because I know I'll hate you when you are old and gray." In 1965, Roger Daltrey sang, "Hope I die before I get old." In 2012, One Direction sang, "Tonight let's get some and live while we're young." Movies like Rapunzel, where Lady Gothel is obsessed with living forever, so she traps Rapunzel in a tower because she has powers that can do that for her. These are all examples in media of the idea that staying young forever is the end goal. So when this is the type of thing we hear and see when we're growing up, it gets drilled into our heads, right? Which brings me to my next point. Why in the world is everyone so obsessed with appearing young? I think it's absolutely ridiculous that 20-year-olds who haven't developed a single wrinkle line are getting preventative Botox because they're so afraid of getting wrinkles. I think all these creams and nighttime routines to prevent wrinkles and frown lines are insane. I think that literal children who have these skincare routines when they've barely hit puberty is dystopian, and I'm not even kidding. There are literal 14-year-olds doing anti-aging stuff on TikTok. Like, what? You're 14. When I was 14, I was worried about y equals mx plus b. Anti-aging should not be a priority for these young people, like it's terrifying. And the fact that most of this anti-aging stuff is aimed at women is so frustrating and also concerning. Whereas men aging is seen as attractive and masculine, why is a woman constantly striving to appear young looking? Why do we want to look young? Makes me think of a word that rhymes with crocodile. Why are women seen as less attractive when they age? Less valuable? Aging is beautiful. It shows that you've lived. Why are people so terrified of it? We should be embracing it, and it's so frustrating. Media has made people scared of their bodies doing body things, and like behaving in ways that bodies behave. I get that this fear of aging stems from the human nature fear of dying, but it's developed into a beauty standard over time. The thing is though, we're all gonna die one day, and I'd much rather live my life not worrying about looking young and just worrying about being happy. In 50 years, I want to look back on my 20s remembering how much fun I had and how much life I lived. I don't want to remember obsessing over my appearance and dreading the day that my first wrinkle would appear. Because at the end of the day, what's the point? We're all gonna die regardless. There are more worthy things to put your energy towards. So please just embrace your life instead of being so afraid of it progressing. Let's start here. I want you to imagine what the world deems as an ideal beauty standard for women. If you're imagining a woman who fits the standard, she's probably blonde, with straight hair, pale, has blue eyes, is skinny, and has delicate facial features. This is an example of European beauty standards, which is defined as focusing on specific physical features, including light skin and eyes, thin bodies and noses, and poker straight hair, to name a few. When women stray from looking this way, meaning anyone who's not white, pale, or skinny, or doesn't have delicate facial features, they're considered not beautiful. It contributes to the system that causes black women's hair to be seen as unprofessional. According to Harvard Business Law, black women's hair was 2.5 times more likely to be perceived as unprofessional, and 1/5 of the black women surveyed between the ages of 25 and 34 had been sent home from work because of their hair. And according to Greatest, a 2020 study found that white women or black women with straightened hair are more likely to land job interviews than black women wearing natural hairstyles, like afros, twists, curls, or braids. These European beauty standards are why women of color are seen as more masculine and less desirable, that if anyone strays from the European ideal of a beautiful woman, it's fair game to ridicule and disrespect them. And these things are absolutely drilled into our heads from a young age. The doll test comes to mind, which was an experiment where children sat in front of a white and a black doll and were asked questions, like which doll is pretty, which doll is good, which doll is bad. And the kids would point at the white doll for all the positive questions and the black doll for the negative questions.
Okay, why is she the dumb child?
Because she has black skin.
Show me the ugly child. Why is he the ugly child?
Because he's wearing black.
Show me the child who has the skin color most adults like. And show me the child who has the skin color most adults don't like.
This shows how portrayal of European beauty standards in media, starting when kids are too small to even understand what race is, are very harmful and contribute to these unconscious biases in children. It's why villains in movies are shown as what's believed to be unattractive, like Ursula in Little Mermaid is portrayed as a larger, unattractive woman, while Ariel is beautiful and fair-skinned with long, flowing, straight hair. These things stick. I have an example of something I went through in middle school that I think is important and ties right into this too. I remember sitting next to someone I considered my friend at the time and her randomly attacking my appearance. She said I had caterpillar eyebrows. This person was white, skinny, pretty, and blonde. She had very thin and light eyebrows. I remember that every time I saw my appearance after that, my eyes would lock onto my eyebrows. Why are they so thick and dark? But then a few years later, it became popular to use an eyebrow pencil to fill in your eyebrows. And a few years after that, feather eyebrows became popular, which is brushing them upwards so they look more wispy. I started getting compliments on my eyebrows even though they still looked like how they did in middle school. I think this topic is important because as trends come and go, certain things will be deemed unattractive and then 2 years later, go right back into fashion. But my facial features aren't some trend, and it's unfair for one's physical appearance to be regarded so lightly like this. Individuality is what makes us who we are, and if we all looked the same, there would be absolutely nothing special about each one of us as individuals. I wish people realized that more. I used to be a tomboy. I grew up with only brothers and only friends like me, so I figure that's why. When I got to high school, I grew out of it and I wanted female friends and to partake in traditionally girly things. Except I never really felt like I could. I always felt like a fraud, and these days, I still do. When I look around at other people my age, they all seem to have it all figured out. And they do it so effortlessly. Like, it feels like everyone has a skincare routine and knows how to do makeup and always has their nails and eyelashes done, and I just have none of the above. I always thought there was something wrong with me specifically, but then I found out that a lot of other people feel this way too, and I think I know why. I've already said how I feel like the beauty standards perpetuated in our society and on social media are entirely unattainable. And even when they are followed to a T, that person will still feel insecure about something. That's human nature. We're never 100% satisfied. So when all these pretty girls online are saying you need this or that to be an it girl and to be in your divine feminine era, it's gonna be overwhelming. Maybe you'll end up doing some of the things they say, but 90% of it isn't practical or even possible. So what does that leave you with? Feelings of not being enough. Not being girly enough, not being pretty enough. And maybe I'm saying this for myself here, but in case I'm not, I want you to hear me. Most of the things we see online are fake. All these pretty girls with flat stomachs and perfect hair and faces, they only show the best of themselves online. Guaranteed they have insecurities and maybe they post these things just to feel better about themselves. Because no one's 100% happy or perfect, that's just not possible. And being pretty or girly enough isn't that important. Because in 50 years, we're going to be so different from how we are today, both physically and mentally. But what will stay with us? Our minds, our intelligence, our hearts and souls. Nothing else will matter in the end. So please, if you struggle with these feelings sometimes like me, just remember this. We don't owe anything to this world as women. There's this amazing quote I found in high school and I've thought about it every so often since. And it's so important. You are under no obligation to look pretty. Not when you're laying around the house, not when you go to the grocery store, not when you sit in a classroom, not when you go to the gym. You're never obligated to get dressed up just so you are pretty for others. Pretty is not the rent you pay to exist in the world as a woman. I went down a lot of rabbit holes while researching for this video, and it made me feel really frustrated at how the world has become, how shallow and superficial everything feels. I miss when social media wasn't so widely used and people just existed. I miss not overthinking every feature of my face and every line on my body. I miss just living and that being enough. Now, don't get me wrong, humans have always cared about physical appearance, but it's never been this bad. I know I only mentioned Shein by name as a fast fashion company in this video, but I urge you to do research and find out if the places you get clothing from regularly are fast fashion. And I know most of the clothing industry uses fast fashion nowadays. Since this is largely our only option, please only buy what you need. Don't be so easily influenced by the people online telling you what clothing and products they think you need, because they're getting paid to say these things. They don't care about you or the planet. Buy clothing that lasts. Only get products you need and will actually use. Now I'm gonna say a sentence that I'm afraid to say out loud, but I'm gonna say it. I'm not pro plastic surgery, but don't get me wrong, I think everyone should be able to do whatever they wish with their body, and I support that 150%. But back to the island example I mentioned at the beginning of this video, we would not have 99% of these insecurities if we lived on an island with no outside interference. So when someone says they're getting work done because they want to and not because of outside interference, I argue that that's not possible, because somewhere, maybe tucked away deep in your brain, there's a subconscious part of you that sees certain things as desirable and other things as undesirable. And even if you're not on social media or whatever, these subconscious thoughts will still get to you. Because you and I both live in a world where the shows and movies we watched growing up, the billboards we saw on the side of the highway driving to school every morning, the language we so regularly use with each other every day, they all contribute to these subconscious thoughts. Whether you're aware of it or not, our brains are being melded every day to believe certain things. So no, I don't support getting plastic surgery. I think it's a drastic solution to a very temporary and perceived problem, because chances are that beauty standard you're trying to follow is going to be out of fashion in a few years, and you're going to be left feeling insecure all over again. And I wholeheartedly believe that every body, every face is beautiful. And social media sucks the life out of us, and I'm tired of it. I've had this idea for a few weeks, but when I got to writing the script, it feels like this has completely consumed my life. Learning about one thing, then another would pop up and I'd fall down that rabbit hole next. Think about how this stuff has consumed so many people's lives and how hopeless it makes me feel. So it's been a lot. But I'm happy I'm talking about this because it's really important, and I wish people took these things more seriously. I dread having to live in a world that's growing further and further away from reality every day. And if I have kids one day, I absolutely would not want them growing up surrounded by these things. It really sucks. These are important conversations, and I really hope we can start to have them more. I know me making this video doesn't even begin to scrape the surface of how dangerous these things really are psychologically and physically. Like, there are real lives being negatively affected by fast fashion every day. It sucks, but I know that my video will change nothing in the world at the end of the day, but what else can I do? At least this way I'm trying to spark these conversations because they're so important. Even if only one person walks away from this feeling differently about social media and the importance that's been placed on physical appearances, I'll be very proud of myself. Because each of us matter, and our individuality is so important. And I hope that people will start to remember that. Okay, one last cheesy thing, I promise. When making this video, I had so many realizations about the world and people, both good and bad. But I had one very important realization about myself. I like myself. I like my brain, my humor, my intelligence. And I think that that's infinitely more important than liking my appearance 100% of the time, because that's not gonna last. And I'm gonna continue being patient with myself because I'm just human, and I'm allowed to be imperfect. I suck at taking myself seriously, so this was kind of really difficult to do. Like, vulnerability is gross. Anyways, I used to really like writing essays in like high school and the first 2 years of college, so like, this is kind of me living back up to that because I miss it, man. Also, there was a lot of percentages that like in this script, where did that come from? I don't know. Anyways, I'm gonna link every article that I used in the description so you guys can do more research if you want to, which I really highly suggest. I especially suggest watching the documentary that I used a clip of called The True Cost. It's all about fast fashion and the harms that it's causing, and it's a really good watch. I'm also gonna link my Twitch where I stream sometimes. I have lots of other videos on my channel about issues on the internet and in real life, so if you like this one, chances are that you'll like at least one of those as well. I also have a couple of other videos planned that I've started writing, so be sure to subscribe and stick around for more. Alrighty, I'm gonna go now. See you soon!